Hi everyone and welcome. I'm Ruz Beshad. This is the 7th part of the series on how to develop a software application. In this part, I'll show you how to call and consume our REST API from the Blazor WebAssembly application that we created in the previous tutorial. We'll also create our first UI to show a list of categories. Before jumping to the primary job, let's have a quick look at what we'll cover in this tutorial. Register HttpClient with a dependency injection container and pass it the RESTful service address. Inject HttpClient to the Razor component. Enable cross-origin resource sharing on the RESTful service side. Display the list of categories with their images. So, let's get started. If you followed the previous video, you'd know that we changed our user interface to be a Blazor WebAssembly application. To test it, you need to run it alongside the REST API. If you use Visual Studio as the development tool, you'll specify multiple startup projects in the solution. To do this, right-click on the Northwind solution and select the Properties option from the shortcut menu. In the Solution Property Pages dialog box, select the Startup Project item on the left pane, and then select Multiple Startup Projects option on the right pane. In the list of projects, change the action to Start for the Northwind.api and Northwind.web projects. Click on the OK button to apply the changes and close the dialog box. Now run the solution. You see that both the API and the web application are now running at their own address. Write down or copy the URLs as we need to use them later in the projects. You might have noticed that the Swagger UI is displayed when we run the REST API, because by default it's configured to show Swagger in the development process. For those who don't know about Swagger, just to say that Swagger is an open source framework that helps us design, build, document, and consume RESTful services. It provides many different tools for developing, interacting with, and documenting APIs. I haven't removed Swagger from the REST API intentionally because it's a friendly tool for testing the API. Still, if you want, you can remove it by modifying the launch settings file and also the configure services method in the startup class. Before starting our main job, stop debugging to proceed with modifying the project's files. Now it's time to call the Web API from the Blazor application. The first step for Blazor is to know what address the Web API is working at. To do this, open the program class in the Blazor project. As you see, this statement registers the HttpClient with the dependency injection container. Later, we inject it into the components to communicate with the Web API to get or send data. You may know that HttpClient is used to send and receive HTTP requests and responses from a resource identified by a URI. HttpClient is implemented using the browser's Fetch API and is subject to its limitation, including enforcement of the same origin policy. This is an important thing that you must be aware of when calling a Web API with a different origin. I'll talk about this later in this video. Because we want the Blazor app to communicate with the Web API, so paste the address you already copied as the base address into here. Also, keep in mind that a better approach is to use HttpClient factory instead of directly creating instances of HttpClient class. But let's talk about this at another time. We want to display a list of all categories in our Blazor application. For this, we need a Razor component, which is usually added to the Pages folder. This folder contains the rootable components or pages with a Razor file extension that make up the Blazor application. So, right-click on it and first add a folder named Categories. Then right-click on the Categories folder and select Razor component from the shortcut menu. In the Add New Item dialog box, enter Category List as the component name with a capital C. Now edit the newly added component this way. Enter Page/Categories at the top of it. The page directive specifies the route for the page, so a URL such as https://localhost at port 44380/categories is a request to display the category list page. Note that the page directive should be the first statement on a page. Next, inject an instance of the HTTP client to the page by using this statement. Now in the code section, declare a category collection to hold the state of the category list. You see that the category object is unknown or undefined for the Blazor app. So we need to add a reference to the models project. You also need to add a using statement to the _import.razor file. This file includes common Razor directives in the app's components, such as using directives for namespaces. After the change, the category class is no longer unknown. Now, create an override version of the uninitialized async method to asynchronously receive all categories. It's invoked when the component is initialized. So we'll have After the task returned by uninitialized async completes, the component is rendered with the updated state. If the categories object is null, the category list hasn't populated yet. In this case, we want to show a loading message to the users. So, add this markup to the beginning of the page. Otherwise, we'll show the list of categories in a table structure. So, well, if you run the program now, you'll see an error shown at the bottom of the page. I do not intend to discuss error handling in this video, but I'll talk about the reason for this error and how to fix it. In our example, the Blazor app running at https://localhost at port 44380 makes a cross-origin resource sharing request to the Web API running at https://localhost at port 44360. Remember that a Blazor WebAssembly application is running inside a web browser. Therefore, it's restricted by the browser security to make requests to a different origin. This restriction is called the same origin policy. The same origin policy restricts but doesn't prevent a malicious site from reading sensitive data from another site. To make requests from the browser to an endpoint with a different origin, the endpoint must enable cross-origin resource sharing. So, let's see how to do that. Go to the startup class in the REST API project. The first step is to add cross-origin resource sharing service to the services container. So add the following statement to the configure services method. From this code, you can see that both HTTP and HTTPS addresses of the Blazor app have been added to the policy. Next, you need to add the CORS middleware. So, add the following statement in the configure method. Note that the use course must be called in the correct order. The call to use course must be placed after use routing and before use authorization. I'd also like to show you how to display the category images on this list. To do this, you must know the following information. First, all images in the Northwind database are stored as binary or byte data. Second, the graphics format of the images is bitmap. Third, they all include 78 leading bytes as OLE data to be handled by the OLE object in the Microsoft Access databases. Note that the Northwind database was first released on Microsoft Access. In our application, we have to skip these leading bytes to show the images correctly. And fourth, to display images in binary format, you need to encode them in 64 base string representation and use them in markup like the following. But as I said before, there are 78 leading bytes in each image, and we need to skip them. So, alright, let's build and run the app one more time and see the result. That's great, it's working nicely. Okay, before saying goodbye, let's make a few minor changes to the UI to make it look better. First, change the title here to Northwind Traders. To this end, you need to go to the nav menu component and change the text in the anchor element. Second, add navigation for the category list so that you don't need to type the URL in the address bar. To do this, you need to add a list item element to the unordered list. Finally, create a style sheet named styles.css in the CSS folder under the www root folder. Add the following rule to it. Drag this CSS file onto the index.html page in the www root folder. Now apply the new CSS rule to the image element on the page. Let's try our app once again. Well, contrary to expectations, the images are still displayed in their original size. This is because browser cache hasn't yet been updated with the new style sheet. To force the cache to be updated, press Shift and F5 keys at the same time. Yes, it looks better. That's all for now. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have any questions regarding the content of the videos, I'd be happy to discuss them with you in the comment sections. If you like this video, please do not forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the following video.